Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
6:06, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, Brian and Brian on WMAL. We're Washington's to talk, and one of the guys going to talk to us right now is a very smart man, Dr. Peter Morici from the University of Maryland, economics professor, smart guy, and a man who I am almost certain has gone to his local 7-Eleven and has bought his ticket. Have you got your lottery ticket, Peter?
Sorry to disappoint you, but no, I don't go in for that sort of thing.
Okay, and tell me why you don't do that.
Well, how can it be a good bet if the government makes all that money off of it? I mean, how can it be a good bet if it does? The answer is it's not. It's not where you want to be. But, you know, it has recreational value. I remember when I was a kid, you could buy Irish sweepstakes tickets in New York, and I don't know that it was quite legal, but the government really didn't do much about it if you paid your taxes on it, because it was one of these things that was offshore.
Right.
And this is before the days of the Internet, and the government trying to regulate all human behavior down to whether or not you eat broccoli, and if you did it in the jurisdiction of Romania. That's Sotomayor's view of individual liberty if it means assuring woman's health.
I'm curious on what the Irish sweepstakes. What was that about? How did that work?
Well, the Irish sweepstakes were basically like a bet on a Kentucky Derby type race. There was an Irish Derby.
Okay.
And you'd buy a ticket on a long shot horse or something. And if that nag came in, you got paid. It was basically like going to the track without being there. It was OTB.
Without going to the track.
OTB.
But it was a special race and a special ticket. You know, you didn't get it. Didn't go on every day. It was a once-a-year thing. And I remember my mother bought one of those, and I came down on her because I was an undergraduate studying economics, and my older brother said, "You have no sense of adventure." And by the way, he's an engineer. He ended up, well, we won't get into what happened to Uncle John.
Well, let's talk about a common experience that everybody's going through right now, high price of gasoline. And yesterday, the Obama administration held a press conference where they doubled down on solar and wind and said that they want to go after what they considered to be what do they call it? Subsidies for oil companies. Well, are these really subsidies?
They are. Just the way the interest deduction on your house is a tax subsidy.
Okay. But could you also characterize them as tax breaks?
Yep.
Do other industries get tax breaks?
That's the whole problem. I mean, basically, Mr. Obama wants to take tax breaks away from the people he doesn't like and give them the tax breaks to the people he does like. Sun and solar, he's already put a lot of money into and had a lot of bad results.
By the way, those weren't tax breaks. Those were direct grants.
Well, in economist's mind, if I forgive you your taxes for $100 or I give you $100, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But he wants to provide his corporate tax proposal, which I went through the burden of reading. He wants to take them away from oil companies and give tax breaks to solar companies. So basically this is tax Republicans so I can subsidize Democrats. Because, that's what this comes down to. So, and by the way, his investments in wind and solar have not come out very well.
No, they haven't.
Not just Solyndra. There was a dozen other bogus companies that his Nobel Prize winning, the other guy in short pants doing finance over at the Department of Energy Secretary True invested in. He was warned by one of the top rating agencies who he asked to evaluate the investments. They told him they were C-rated, which meant a 70% chance of default, and he put the money in. And his critics say to me, "Oh, Peter, you're being unfair. He's not doing the investing. We brought down somebody from Goldman Sachs to do it." Well, that's nonsense. I mean, he's responsible, but what's more, the financier that he brought down to make these investments should have known what C means. In graduate school, C is unacceptable. So no, this is really just politics.
Well, but here's the bottom line, though. If he wants to get rid of these tax subsidies or tax breaks, whatever you want to call them, will it have any effect at the pump? It's not going to drive prices down.
No.
It's not, right?
No. But raising taxes on oil companies will drive prices up in the long term.
Right.
It's like not drilling. And again, we're hearing, well, if we drill today, it wouldn't make a difference. But if we'd started drilling 3, 4, 8 years ago,
you're singing my song, brother.
Then we'd be in a lot better shape because at least the money wouldn't be leaving the country and gas prices would be a bit lower. But you got to remember, President Obama, with gas at $1.80 or $1.90 a gallon, was campaigning around the country about the terribly high price of gasoline. and that he was going to do something about
Make it better. That's right.
Right? And, then he gets elected, and Secretary Chu says we have to find some way to make gasoline prices as high in the United States as they are in Europe. And, they have doubled. They've gone from $2. He was a little bit less than 2 when he took office. Now it's about 4. So he's doubled them. And, he says he needs 4 more years to finish the job. Yeah, there'll be $8 a gallon before he's done. And then we'll be right up there with Britain. You got to visit Britain.
By the way, why are gas prices so high in Europe?
Taxes.
Exactly. They're just extra taxes.
And by the way, you go to Europe and people live in neat little villages, but they can't go anywhere because they can't afford to travel. It is so expensive that nobody goes anyplace. Of course, you see the movies and people are going to Carnes. The political class gets taken care of, and they take care of their buddies in finance, but the rest of them don't get to travel. See, Barack Obama basically wants us all to be able to ride 2 subway stops to our favorite health clinic and call it a day.
All right, you brought up Sonia Sotomayor in the beginning, so I want to talk to you about the health care and the Affordable Care Act, whether or not it's going to be struck down or not. But ultimately, what impact would that have on the economy? What impact would it have on what we have to pay, every 2 weeks or every month for healthcare? Healthcare costs are not going to be changed no matter what, right?
Well, the most recent article on the subject appeared in the South Florida Sun Sentinel on Tuesday.
By a guy named Peter Morici, right?
Exactly. If the mandate is viewed as severable, so that you just basically strike down the mandate. Mm-hmm. I don't believe it's going to have a major impact on the law. The reason is Maryland, along with some other states, already has requirements that insurers take all comers and that they can't discriminate on the basis of rates, and it has somewhat raised the rates. This by making young people buy, which this is what about, would lower them down a bit. Mm-hmm. You can continue you can continue with the law. My feeling is the law as written sooner or later will make private insurance unaffordable and force everybody into that public alternative. And we will move to a single-payer system. You might not like that. I certainly don't like it, but that's where we're going. Now, with striking down the law perversely, striking down the individual mandate would move us to that more quickly. If they strike down the whole law, then there's going to be a certain amount of chaos and panic. Mm-hmm. And looking at the imaginative powers of Mitt Romney and his history in Massachusetts, I think it's going to be great theater to watch him try to come up with an alternative plan. Because basically, Mr. Obama can say, look, I gave it my best shot. I'm willing to try again. What are your ideas? Near as I could tell, your ideas were my ideas. Mm-hmm. He's really going to be on the dime, and I don't think that's a dime he stands on very well. Now, if the economy is going decently, that will cost Romney any hope of winning the election. If the economy is going badly, then Romney can turn around and say, look, you spent your first 2 years, pushing through this thing and Dodd-Frank. Now people can't get a loan. The healthcare industry is in a mess, and the economy is in a mess. You're basically a failed president. I think the notion of painting him as a failed president works if the economy slows down and unemployment begins to rise again. The economy is going to slow down. The question is, does unemployment rise, or does Barack Obama even persuade even more people not to look for a job?
But we're not having time. But if it's struck down and Barack Obama wins in November, there's no way he's going to be able to get anything through this Congress.
There's going to be no change in the U.S. healthcare system for a very long time if this is struck down. Simply, the Republicans don't have an alternative. There is no greater fantasy than the notion that Congressman Ryan's budget has in it meaningful health care reforms. It is absolute sophistry over there. I mean, my feeling is the only thing more vacuous than their President Obama's views are Mr. Ryan's views. And we'll be happy to talk about that next week if you like.
We'll do that. All right, Peter, it's always good to have you on. Thanks.